Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering woke NASA in a panic. Because if you're a scientist and you work at NASA and not everybody knows what your pronouns are and your sexual preferences, and you can't put your special flags on your desk announcing who you are in terms of your sexual identity, or at least a hint at your sexual identity, how can you possibly be a scientist? When I started working on this, I was doing my normal research in the morning, and then I came across this article from Scientific American. This is what the article said. Trump's DEI purge is hitting NASA hard, which seemed a little disjointed to me. I thought to myself, well, Adam, hey, how can NASA be hit hard by Trump's DEI purge? It's mostly about science over there, isn't it? And yeah, I understand that they've been pushing this on all the federal agencies, and in science, they're trying to diversify science or whatever. They're making up their own gay science now. But still, even so, there are some physical realities of dealing with things like space and astronauts and calculating like asteroids literally hitting the Earth. You would need to actually pay attention to regular science, not this new version of science they're trying to use to incorporate diversity and inclusion. But no, they're serious. From Scientific American, Trump's DEI purge is hitting NASA hard. Here's what happened. Shortly after Trump's inauguration, NASA employees received a shocking directive. They were ordered to remove all mentions of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, that's DEIA, from public websites immediately. Why would you need that on the website in the first place? I don't know, it's like inclusion or something. The directive specifically targeted references to women, indigenous people, and environmental justice. NASA workers were given a same-day deadline, told to drop everything and comply. Speaking anonymously, a NASA employee confirmed that this was not a suggestion, but a strict order. Well, why would they even bother communicating with you if the top of the organization is telling you to do something? It's not a suggestion. It's not a, why don't you consider doing this maybe sometime? Just drop everything, and that's a suggestion. No, that is an order. This shows you there's been no discipline at NASA for the last several years. Leadership was, quote, absolutely serious about erasing DEI-related content. Among the purge terms were women in leadership and any language that promoted gender or racial equity. Employees had no choice but to carry out the digital purge. Trump appointed Janet Petro as NASA's new acting administrator, shocking even longtime NASA officials. Ironically, Petro had previously been an outspoken advocate for diversity. In 2021, Petro publicly praised NASA's diversity efforts, stating that inclusion was essential to innovation. I don't know how she made that math work, but again, it's special new math. She even emphasized how Kennedy Space Center had embraced diverse teams. But under Trump, Petro suddenly reversed her stance. She claimed that diversity programs had divided Americans and wasted taxpayer dollars. How could you say it's a waste to produce all of this content, information, instructions, and hiring subpar employees who did not get where they were based on merit? How could you say that would be a waste? You should be considering it an investment in inclusion that will just simply never pay off. And then someone else will come behind and clean up that mess. That's the best way to look at it. Her total reversal on diversity raised suspicions that she was acting out of political loyalty rather than principle. Some saw her as a willing enforcer of Trump's anti-woke agenda. The broader move aligns with Trump's executive orders against DEI initiatives in federal agencies. Many other government-funded institutions have also been forced to comply. NASA employees were left stunned, realizing that any mention of diversity, even acknowledging women in leadership, was now forbidden. Because the women in leadership pages, the way that was presented was, oh, look at this special diverse sideline, away from the focus of what NASA is supposed to be focused on if you're a serious person and you're actually looking at the website. Of course, women accomplish all kinds of things. We don't need to see about their leadership based on their gender on the NASA website. That's not important. If they accomplish things, let's see who they are. It doesn't matter what their gender is. Do a webpage on that. Leaders of NASA, not women leaders of NASA. Eventually, the NASA employees who are actually supposed to be smarter than most of us, like actual scientist people that know physics and things like that, managed to figure out that this was not just a policy change, this was an actual cultural shift. Critics are arguing that this move erases progress made for marginalized groups in STEM. It also sends a clear message: diversity is no longer welcome in Trump's America. Except if you actually have merit, then we don't care if you're diverse or not. It's always been the same message. Be as diverse as you want, but don't replace people that have merit just because you have a certain skin color, sexual preference, or a specific gender that you've chosen to be today, tomorrow, or any day next week. Some NASA insiders believe Petro had no choice but to comply, but others see her appointment as a calculated decision, someone who would not resist Trump's orders. Outside NASA, scientists and advocates are furious at the government's growing attack on diversity. The implications stretch far beyond space exploration, touching every corner of federally funded science. The censorship of DEI language at NASA is part of a wider rollback on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which has no place in society. Everyone deserves the same opportunity, no matter what they look like, their sexual preference, or what their race is. The new leadership at NASA is looking for changes. Employees have been told to remove pride flags, diversity-related posters, and pronouns from their email signatures. Many scientists say they feel forced to hide their support for inclusivity out of fear for professional consequences. NASA had previously been a leader in diversity efforts, with inclusion officially added as a core value in 2020. Under Trump's directive, inclusion has now been quietly erased from NASA's mission statements and internal guidelines, thank goodness. Affinity groups for marginalized communities, which are special groups that are funded by the employer that give certain opportunities, resources, training, essentially special favors to people of certain specific group types, whether it's skin color or sexual preference. But affinity groups for LGBT employees, veterans, and racial minorities have all been shut down now. These groups previously worked on accessibility projects and mentoring programs, but are now being silenced. And in the case of DEI, a mentoring program is where we hire you off the street, and in this kind of mentoring program, we pick out someone who actually does know what they're doing, and we force them to try to teach you how you could possibly do your job, while at the same time pretty much making them be in a position where they have to do your job for you because you were never hired based on merit. It's not like you could ever actually do your job. Many scientists inside and outside of NASA see these changes as a betrayal of the agency's long-standing commitment to diversity. Some fear the rollback could discourage generations of future women, LGBT individuals, and people of color from pursuing careers in space science. Why would you want them to pursue careers in space science if they can't get there based on merit? Just asking. It seems like a good question to ask, because a scientist would want someone that can pursue truth, that can help humanity with understanding how the universe and the world actually works to better all people. You can't do that when you're playing games with the sciences. NASA employees describe a growing sense of fear and unease, with some afraid to even open their work emails. One scientist compared it to waiting for the next bad news to drop every single day. While official policies are changing, many NASA employees are finding subtle ways to resist, such as privately continuing to use correct pronouns for colleagues. Which, of course, you can do. You can call your friend whatever you want to call your friend. Just stop putting it in emails as if the federal government is sanctioning this complete, ridiculous insanity. Others say they refuse to let the administration's policies dictate how they treat their peers. A February 6th open letter protesting NASA's DEI purge has gathered over 1,000 signatures from scientists and researchers outside the agency. These experts argue that dismantling inclusion initiatives will harm both scientific progress and NASA's ability to recruit top talent. Because if what you mean by top talent is people that have no skills, then yes, this might interfere with promoting those people into jobs that they're not qualified for. One of the effective programs was a mentorship initiative pairing underrepresented students with planetary scientists. Are you kidding me? The loss of such programs means fewer opportunities for diverse young scientists to enter the field. But why would you waste the time of a planetary scientist on someone that didn't get that opportunity based on their actual ability? Some scientists believe that Trump's move will set NASA back decades in terms of workplace inclusivity. Oh, in terms of that, not in terms of the mission, the actual mission of the federal agency that we spend billions of dollars to fund. They argue that the agency is returning to a time when space exploration was dominated almost entirely by white men. What, like when we actually had the ability to create our own spacecraft and then take it outside of Earth's atmosphere? Like, that would be a good time to go back to. That was kind of the whole purpose of NASA in the first place. We don't spend billions of dollars a year on NASA to be a summer camp for underrepresented students. They have a space camp for that. Trump's DEI purge isn't limited to NASA. His order applies to all federal agencies, forcing widespread rollbacks of diversity programs. Critics fear this will have long-term consequences for government-funded science and education. NASA's new leadership has issued vague statements promising to, quote, engage the best talent while adhering to the new requirements. However, many employees feel these reassurances mean little when active diversity initiatives are being erased. The decision to eliminate DEI programs comes at a time when private space companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin are actively recruiting diverse talent. Some worry that NASA's shift could drive top scientists away to the private sector. Many NASA employees say they're staying silent out of fear of retaliation as government workers have limited ability to protest policies from the administration. Because, like, you're paid to do a job for the government. You can keep your social ideology and your politics at home. Instead, resistance is coming primarily from outside researchers and advocacy groups. Many of those researchers rely on outside federal grants, and they'd better be careful, that's all I'm saying. Despite the sweeping changes, NASA scientists remain committed to their work, emphasizing that their mission to explore space will continue. However, many believe that innovation and progress in space exploration are best achieved when a diverse group of minds is included in the journey. As long as those minds all function well. And from the not-so-scientific American, Trump's DEI purge is hitting NASA hard. One planetary scientist complained, quote, how do you go from something being so important that it's a pillar of the agency to being so reviled that it's off of everything? Asked Julie Rathburn, a scientist from Cornell University. Quote, it feels like a betrayal by NASA, says Cass Nicely, a planetary geophysicist at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks. Quote, it's inefficient, it's wasteful, and it's also just messed up. NASA's push towards inclusivity is one of the most visible in the US government. In the 1950s and the 1960s, all the agency's astronauts were white men. By 1978, it had bowed to internal and external pressure and had chosen several women and people of color to fly into space. Today, NASA's astronauts, as well as its world-renowned scientific and engineering teams, are measurably diverse. But signs of NASA's efforts to make space for everyone are disappearing. These removals have been triggered by both official edicts, such as the requirement to remove pronouns from employees' email signatures, and by unofficial notices, such as verbal suggestions to remove flags or other displays from workspaces. Many NASA employees are angry about the changes to DEI, but are buckling down to work nevertheless. Quote, we believe in the mission, and we know that our work is important, says the senior scientist. Quote, we know that it matters for the nation. Researchers have been studying the DEI practices that improve science and have been working with NASA to integrate those approaches into its funding programs. These include a system for anonymous review of proposals to use facilities such as the Hubble Space Telescope, a change that reduces gender and other biases, and requiring inclusion plans in agency-funded research grants, which raises awareness of barriers to participation. Quote, for NASA to ignore what many scientists have shown for years confuses the hell out of me, according to Rathburn. So they're going to waste the resources of the Hubble Space Telescope, not based on the quality of the people that would do the quality of the work that we should hope is going to actually move science forward, and they're going to just use it for diversity. No, not anymore. That's all getting wiped out. Viewed broadly, the cuts, quote, basically say that indigenous peoples, underrepresented peoples, even women don't really belong there at NASA, says Hilding Nielsen, an astronomer at the Memorial University of Newfoundland in St. John's, Canada, and a Mi'kmaq person. Quote, that's a horrible and shameful thing that is going to set NASA back decades, if not longer. Some researchers inside and outside the agency are doubling down on their scientific and technical projects while living according to their values as best they can. Quote, you can take down the websites, and you can tell people not to put their pronouns in their emails, but that doesn't mean they're not going to use the right pronouns for their colleagues, according to Sarah Horst, a planetary scientist at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland. Others are feeling alienated by the agency's actions. For the early career scientists, the uproar is a huge distraction from their work. Quote, can I be allowed to focus on my science, please? Yeah, that was the whole point. DEI has no place in any federal agency. No science organization, no private organization, no public organization, no nonprofit, no business. Everyone should earn their place based on their ability. And now more than ever, if you work hard, there's an opportunity for you in any field that you're actually good at. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you. And if you want to support the channel and help me make even more videos, subscribe to the channel and become a paid member today.